Hey, it's Rafael Krieger here, and this video we're gonna explore how to finally beat perfectionism using a few uncommon strategies I've recently discovered. And I have also been applying them with my clients, getting amazing results. And I should start by saying that personally, I've struggled a lot with perfectionism. And these unreasonable standards often made me retreat in fear, procrastinate, abandon several projects in the middle, and I just remember feeling ashamed and paralyzed by it. I just couldn't bear the notion of allowing people to see my creations and to be in the spotlight because there was this constant, loud, and nagging voice just berating me. But somehow things gradually shifted in the past 3 years or so, and I finally tamed the devil of perfectionism. So now I want to explore a few keys that helped me and my clients. And the most important one being the flow state, a method that can be easily paired with the idea of shadow integration. And before we jump into it, let me tell you that if you want to learn more about the flow, human psychology, and the shadow integration, you can join my newsletter down below. I'll also send you a copy of my book Pistis, Demystifying Human Psychology. And if you want one-on-one help, you can also check my mentorship down below, and I also have a few courses. So the first thing we have to understand about perfectionism is that this complex is often a compensation for feelings of shame and inferiority. And this creates an external sense of self-worth. And this is something people identified with the poor and proletarians often experience. So in other words, we become enslaved to winning other people's validations and over-identify with our creations. But the problem is that we start conflating real love with validation. So in that sense, perfectionism becomes a strategy to earn love, be seen, and not be abandoned. But this incessant chase for validation puts people in a narcissistic headspace, as everything becomes about you, your image, and what you can get from others. So unconsciously, the perfectionist doesn't want to be mere mortal. No, he doesn't want to be relatable, and that's why he feels deeply lonely. And when it comes to his creations, the perfectionist always prefers to let them exist only in their imaginary realm, instead of truly bringing them to life. But it's interesting that Marie von says that the creative act involves sacrificing part of our childish idealizations so we can finally have something real. In other words, to truly create, we must become more human, step away from our narcissism and embrace our shadows, because the constant editing brings forth lifeless and mediocre art. And it's important to understand that as time passes, perfectionism becomes a comfortable prison and a cop-out for not taking risks, not getting involved with anything and anyone, and not truly committing to developing a craft. So I already have a full video detailing the origins and dynamics of perfectionism that I'll link for you over here and also down below, along with the videos on the poor eternus. So now I want to focus on a few practical keys to overcoming it. So to conquer perfectionism, we must first of all end the need for external approval, because playing by other people's standards poisons our worldview and our creations. So instead of constantly chasing validation and aspiring to keep this immaculate persona, we must shift our values and learn to do things simply because we enjoy and value them. So in other words, we must learn to have fun. And in Jungian terms, this often involves working with the inferior function to allow the animus and anima to be expressed and integrated. But it's crucial to understand that we can't solve these problems intellectually, because we need deeply embodied experiences. And that's where the flow state enters. So flow is the most powerful tool to unlock intrinsic motivation. Because when we are fully immersed in a deeply enjoyable activity, being able to play, create, and express ourselves is its own reward. And we can finally end the need for external approval, because what other people think simply stops mattering so much. And it's interesting that flow literally changes how our brain works. And due to the transient hypofrontality that happens during this state, it completely shuts down, that loud and nagging voice. The inner critic is completely silent. And this is an extra help to free ourselves from chasing this validation and start living by our own standards and our own experiences. So the more we get into flow, the more we can shift our values, shift this external sense of self-worth, and start trusting, in the state, in the flow, and how we feel about doing these things. Now, to break the self involvement part and get out of that narcissistic headspace, you must learn to develop love and respect for our crafts and put them in the service of other people, being service of the greater good. So, by understanding that a sense of purpose lies outside, we can finally get out of our own way. Now, the next key is understanding that struggle is your friend. So, every perfectionist expects to be immaculate on everything they do in their first try. And if they're not merely good at it, they think they don't have any talent or it's not for them. But this perspective is completely against the flow state and also a cop out for not doing the hard work. So you must stop the poor eternity inside of you. So it's important to understand that flow is comprised of 4 stages. We have struggle, release, flow, and recovery. So in other words, an initial struggle is always expected. And it's a sign you're learning new skills. And if you push just a little bit, everything becomes automated and then you can finally experience flow. But to achieve it, it's important to stop labeling everything and keep a beginner's mindset. If you can't achieve something the first try, it's not because you suck and it's not for you. It's just the struggle phase. You're just learning something new. So, give yourself the chance to play, make mistakes, and experiment. Lastly, you must also lower the barrier for success and have simple goals. So instead of expecting to run 20 miles in your first week, focus on simply putting on your sneakers and getting out of the house at a given time. What comes after it is a bonus. Remember that keeping unreasonable standards is just pure self-sabotage. So you see how this simple mental shift makes everything easier and you naturally start to accomplish more. So I advise you to apply this mentality to everything you want to learn. And lastly, I believe the easiest way to start experimenting with the flow state is through lateralization. So here's what I mean. The activities we want to perform or best usually involve a lot of expectations, wounds, and external demands. There is a lot of pressure. So that's why I find it best to start with something unrelated to our professions and as free as possible of expectations. So I want you to think about something you can literally do just for fun, preferably something that involves the body or manual skills. So in my case, I always wanted to be good at singing and playing guitar. But when I was in music school, this just impossible because there was a lot of external demands and pressure and also my own expectations because I never felt like I was good enough. So getting into flow was very, very hard. It didn't matter how much I've tried and practiced. So what I did is that I started to go to the gym and focus on getting good at it because there's no pressure, no expectation for me to, lift 1,000 pounds or something like that. I'm not a bodybuilder, I'm not a powerlifter, so it was just easier to focus on that. And when I started to get into flow more through, intense physical activity, getting to flow with my guitar, singing, and nowadays writing, recording videos, and also during my therapy sessions became a lot easier. Because when you experience flow in one area, you can transfer these skills to all other areas of your life. Everything becomes easier. So just pick a new hobby or something free of expectations and commit to develop yourself in it. And remember that it's not about reaching perfection, but having more flow and enjoyment in your life. And lastly, you can learn more about how flow helps you to overcome traumas in the next video.